Right. 14 January 2026. Uh, Today, I just want us to talk about the mistakes that ED has made that are exactly similar to those of Robert Mugabe that made him to be removed in 2017. So Emmerson Mnangagwa's presidency has increasingly mirrored the late Robert Mugabe's final years, repeating many of the same political, economic, and governance mistakes that ultimately led to Mugabe's removal in 2017. While Mnangagwa initially presented himself as a reformer who would break from Mugabe's excesses, his leadership trajectory suggested continuity rather than rupture. These repeated errors raised the possibility that Mnangagwa could face a similar fate, removal not by popular vote but through internal party and military dynamics. Okay, as you remember what happened in 2017, although we know that it's not going to happen in the same way, but his failures now failure to deliver meaningful economic reform. One of Mugabe's most fatal mistakes was presiding over prolonged economic collapse while offering rhetoric instead of solutions. Hyperinflation, currency, um, hyperinflation, currency instability, unemployment, um, and industrial decay defined his later years. Mnangagwa inherited these. So Mnangagwa inherited this crisis with an opportunity to reset, yet has largely failed to implement structural reforms. The reintroduction of a weak local currency, inconsistent fiscal policies, high taxation, and persistent corruption have deepened public hardship. Like Mugabe, Mnangagwa has relied on short-term fixes and blame shifting, often citing sanctions or external enemies rather than tackling international policy failures. Economic misery erodes legitimacy, especially within urban areas and security sector, just as it did under Mugabe. Right, centralization of power and authoritarianism. Mugabe's downfall was partly rooted in his refusal to share power or tolerate dissent, even within ZANU PF. So Mnangagwa has followed the same path. Power has been centralized around the presidents, sidelining independent institutions, parliament, and even party structures. Opposition voices, civil society activists, and journalists and trade unionists continue to face intimidation, arrest, and violence. This mirrors Mugabe's repressive approach, which ultimately bred resentment and resistance, not only among citizens, but also among elites who felt politically suffocated. I think you already know Kuti, he is making a lot of military changes, all that, making sure that, you know, yeah. So, militarization of politics. Mugabe increasingly relied on military to maintain power, blurring the line between civilian governments and security control. Ironically, it was the same military that removed him when he became a liability. Mnangagwa, whose rise to power was military assisted, has leaned heavily on the security sector to suppress protests and manage elections. This independence, this dependence is dangerous when a leader's authority rests on military rather than popular consent. Survival depends on continued elite loyalty. Mugabe learned too late that once the military's interests diverge from the leaders, removal becomes swift and decisive. Right, that's the mistake what Mnangagwa is thinking that, okay, if you put people of your choice, right, you think that all these military individuals will protect him. No, Mugabe did the same. but the military didn't protect him. They are the ones that actually removed him. So, pakato shata baba. 4. Factionalism and succession mismanagement. Mugabe's refusal to manage succession created deep factional battles within ZANU PF, culminating in the G40 Lacoste conflict that triggered his ouster. Mnangagwa has failed to resolve succession issues and has instead intensified internal pages. Rival faction persist beneath the surface and potential successes are marginalized rather than managed. This creates paranoia, instability, and the elite insecurity, conditions similar to those that made Mugabe vulnerable to an internal coup. Right, these are the mistakes that is still doing. Ask kubuda pachena kuti who is the possible candidate anokwanisa kuti take over, because if you don't do that munobviswa. Handiti unozviona, we don't want that to happen, but ndimi munozvikonzeresa mega. Kana usina succession plan, what will happen? You will be removed. Right. Electoral manipulation and legitimacy crisis. Mugabe maintained power through disputed elections that steadily lost credibility, both domestically and internationally. Mnangagwa has continued this situation. Elections under his rule have been managed by allegations of rigging, violence, media bias, and state capture of electoral institutions. As with Mugabe, repeated contested victories hollow out legitimacy. When leaders lack genuine electoral mandate, they rely increasingly on coercion, accelerating the cycle that leads to internal rebellion, corruption, and patronage in politics. Right. Corruption. Under Mugabe, corruption became systemic, serving as a glue to hold elite support together. Mnangagwa promised to fight corruption, but has instead presided over selective prosecutions and enriched patronage networks. High-level corruption scandals remain unresolved, while politically connected individuals enjoy impunity. This mirrors Mugabe's tolerance of corruption as long as loyalty was maintained, a strategy that ultimately weakened the state and alienated both citizens and reform-minded elites. International isolation and broken promises. Mugabe's confrontational foreign policy and failure to re-engage the international community worsened Zimbabwe's isolation. Mnangagwa promised that Zimbabwe is open for business, yet democratic backsliding, human rights abuses, and policy inconsistency have undermined re-engagement efforts like Mugabe. Mnangagwa has overpromised reform while under-delivering, leading to donor fatigue and investor skepticism. Right. Now, you can see that all the mistakes that Mugabe has made are still being made to date. This can trigger a internal discontent, and people will just you will see what can happen. We still have these people, we still have a lot of people who, can do something to remove Mnangagwa, and even those that he appointed are still can do the same. So, guys, tell me what you think in the comment section regarding this this matter. Thank you for watching and listening.